The rain began just before sunset, soft at first, then steady, like the sky was trying to say something it had held back all day. Farah noticed it while standing near the kitchen window, watching the streetlights blur. The house felt larger when it rained, full of echoes and old thoughts. She wiped her hands on a towel and took a slow breath, unaware that this ordinary evening was about to leave a mark on her life. Amina had come home tired. She barely spoke during dinner, pushing rice around her plate, her eyes heavy. Farah asked gentle questions, but Amina only smiled and said work was long. Soon after, Amina kissed her mother's cheek and went to bed early. Farah listened to her footsteps fade up the stairs, feeling that quiet relief mothers feel when their children are safe at home. Farah began folding laundry in the living room. The television played softly, a news channel she wasn't really watching. The room smelled of clean clothes and tea. Everything felt normal. To normal. Then the front door opened. Imran stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket. He stopped when he saw Farah. It was a small pause, barely a second, but Farah felt it. He didn't smile right away. He didn't speak. He just looked at her like he was searching for something he had lost. Farah straightened without thinking. She had known Imran for 3 years now. He was always polite, careful with words, never crossing lines. She had seen him nervous, angry, even tired. But never like this. His eyes held a weight she did not understand. "You're home late," she said, keeping her voice calm. "Yes," Imran replied. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't used it all day. Work ran long. He took off his shoes slowly, still looking at her. Farah felt a strange warmth on her skin, like the air had changed. She turned back to the laundry to give herself something to do. Amina went to bed, she added. "I know," he said. "I saw her light go off." Silence filled the room again. The rain outside grew louder. Farah folded a shirt, then another, her hands moving on habit. She could feel him there, standing too still. Imran finally sat on the edge of the couch. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Farah noticed his hands were shaking. That scared her more than anything else. "You look tired," she said. He nodded. "I am." Another pause. Farah felt like she was waiting for something to fall. She had lived long enough to recognize moments like this, moments where life shifted without warning. "Tea?" she asked. "Yes, please." She went into the kitchen, grateful for the short distance. As the kettle heated, she pressed her palm against the counter. Her heart was beating too fast. She told herself to calm down. Imran was family. Whatever this feeling was, it meant nothing. When she returned with the tea, Imran looked up. His eyes softened when he saw her. That look again. Gentle, heavy, almost grateful. "Thank you," he said, taking the cup carefully. Their fingers almost touching. Farah pulled her hand back quickly. She sat in the chair across from him, keeping space between them. The tea steamed quietly. Imran took a sip, then another. He didn't speak. Farah felt the urge to fill the silence, but something held her back. She watched him instead. He looked older tonight. Tired lines marked his face. His shoulders were tense, like he carried something too big for him alone. "You should rest," she said softly. "Tomorrow will come soon." He gave a small smile. "You always say that." She smiled back. "Because it's always true." Imran laughed quietly, then stopped. His smile faded. He looked at her again, deeper this time. Farah's breath caught. "I don't know how you do it," he said. "Do what?" "Stay calm, stay strong, even when things are heavy." Farah felt a pull in her chest. She had heard many people say similar things over the years. Still, from him, it felt different. Too personal. "Strength comes from duty," she replied. "And love?" Imran looked away. "Sometimes love feels confusing." The words landed between them, sharp and sudden. Farah felt her stomach tighten. She chose her words carefully. "Love can be hard," she said, "but confusion passes." Imran nodded slowly, like he was listening to advice he didn't want but needed. He stared into his tea, watching the steam rise and vanish. The rain thundered louder. The lights flickered for a second, then steadied. Farah felt like the house was listening. Imran stood up suddenly. "I should check on Amina," he said. "Yes," Farah agreed too quickly. He took 2 steps, then stopped. He turned back to her. "I'm grateful," he said, "for you." Farah met his eyes. "She's grateful for you too," she said firmly. Imran flinched just a little. He nodded and walked upstairs. Farah remained seated long after he disappeared. Her tea grew cold in her hands. She replayed the evening again and again, searching for answers. Nothing had happened, yet everything felt different. Later that night, Farah lay in bed awake. The rain had slowed, but her thoughts raced. She thought of her years as a mother, of sacrifices made quietly, of moments when she had put her own feelings aside without question. She had done what was right for so long that it felt like breathing. So why did her heart feel unsettled now? She remembered Imran's eyes, the way they had searched her face. Not with desire, she told herself, with confusion, with need. That made it no better. Farah turned to her side, closing her eyes. She whispered a short prayer, asking for clarity, for strength, for the wisdom to protect her family. Down the hall, Imran sat awake too, staring at the dark ceiling. Realizing that one look had changed something he could not undo, and neither of them knew how much that moment would test them in the days to come. The days after that rainy night felt heavier than usual. Farah woke every morning with a sense that something had shifted in the house. The air seemed thicker, quieter, almost watchful. She went about her routines, making breakfast, tidying the rooms, checking the plants, but even small tasks felt different when Imran moved silently in the background. He had always been polite and cautious, but now there was something else, something fragile, something that felt like an unspoken question between them. Farah noticed it first at breakfast. Amina had gone out early to meet a friend, leaving Farah and Imran alone at the kitchen table. The sunlight spilled across the tablecloth, highlighting the steaming cups of tea. Imran poured milk into his cup carefully, but his hands trembled slightly. Farah watched, pretending not to notice, folding her hands over her lap. She felt the tension rising in the room, the quiet kind that waits for someone to speak, for someone to break it. She wondered if it was a mistake to be alone with him at all. But she couldn't leave. She had work in the garden later, errands to run. She had to stay. Imran cleared his throat and looked at her. The words didn't come at first. He stared at the floor, then at his hands, then back at her. Farah knew the feeling. She had seen it before in people who were torn between respect and temptation, confusion and responsibility. And for a moment, her heart skipped in worry. She had to remind herself, he was her daughter's husband. Nothing else could exist. That line had to stay. Finally he spoke, and his voice was low. I've been thinking about that night." Farah froze slightly. She didn't know what he meant, but she waited. She kept her expression neutral, her hands folded neatly, trying to appear calm while her heart thumped too quickly. "Thinking about what?" she asked softly, careful not to sound harsh or accusing. "The way I acted," he said. "Or maybe the way I felt. I don't know. It was confusing. You were kind to me, but I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't know how to handle it." He paused, his gaze dropped. "I feel foolish." Farah's chest tightened. She had anticipated moments like this in her life, but never this exact one. His words were gentle, not threatening, but they carried a weight she wasn't sure she could handle. She took a breath, steadying herself. "Imran," she said carefully, "sometimes we confuse comfort with something else. That doesn't mean anything inappropriate happened. It's natural to feel grateful or supported or relieved when someone listens, but those feelings have to be kept in perspective." Imran nodded, but his expression didn't relax. rubbed the back of his neck, and looked out the window. The wind stirred the curtains, making shadows dance across the room. He looked exhausted, as if the simple act of sitting here and speaking honestly had drained him. Farah understood. She had felt the same before, in moments where human emotions collided with responsibilities. She wanted to help him, but she also wanted to protect the delicate line between them. "You've always been kind to me," Imran said, almost whispering. "More than anyone else has been. Even when Amina is busy, or I feel lost, or work overwhelms me, you listen. You don't judge, you understand." Farah's fingers tightened around her teacup. She had always tried to listen, to offer support without crossing lines, but hearing him say it aloud felt different. Vulnerability was dangerous in small doses. It was the kind of thing that could grow if unchecked. She forced herself to remain calm. "Imran," she said gently, "kindness is human. Listening is human. That doesn't change the boundaries we must respect. You are her husband and I am her mother. That relationship matters above all else." He nodded again, but his eyes lingered on her face. She noticed the way his eyebrows furrowed slightly, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man wrestling with his own conscience, balancing desire, gratitude, and loyalty. She had seen this in people before, but rarely so clearly. It made her heart ache, not for him, not for herself, but for the fragility of human emotion. How easily hearts could be unsettled when the world weighed too much on them. The silence returned after that, thick and deliberate. Farah sipped her tea slowly, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of birds outside. Imran stared at the floor, then at his hands again, then out the window. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Words felt inadequate. They both knew that. Silence could carry more truth than anything said aloud. Finally, Imran stood. He walked toward the living room window and gazed at the street. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said quietly, "especially Amina or you." There was a tremor in his voice, a raw honesty that made Farah's chest tighten. She did not flinch. Instead, she reminded herself silently that compassion was not weakness, and honesty did not equal temptation. "Then don't," she said simply. "Focus on what matters most. Protect your marriage, protect your family." He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. There was a flicker of something: regret, longing, confusion, but it passed quickly. Imran nodded, as if her words were both an anchor and a warning. "I will," he said. His voice was firm now, steadier. Farah felt a small relief, but also a lingering sadness. It wasn't fear or shame, was the knowledge that human hearts often wandered, even when the mind was steadfast. The afternoon passed slowly. Imran left to help with errands, though he moved with a distracted pace. Farah cleaned the living room, trying to steady her thoughts. She replayed their conversation again and again. Every gesture, every word, every glance. Nothing inappropriate had happened, but the emotional charge in the air was undeniable. She understood it fully. Gratitude, vulnerability, and loneliness could create connections in moments of weakness. And she had to ensure those connections never crossed the boundaries of respect. When Amina returned in the evening, laughing softly with a friend, Farah felt relief wash over her. The normalcy of her daughter's presence restored a balance that had been trembling all day. Imran greeted Amina warmly, and for a moment he seemed like the husband she always knew: polite, attentive, and respectful. Farah watched them, a quiet smile on her face, though her mind remained alert. Nothing had changed outwardly, but inwardly she knew things had shifted. Awareness of the fragility of emotion now weighed on her heavily. That night, Farah lay in bed thinking about the day. She remembered Imran's eyes, the slight tremor in his hands, the honesty in his voice. She understood completely why he had felt confused. Loneliness, fatigue, gratitude, they had collided in him in a moment of vulnerability. And yet, she also understood why it mattered so much to maintain boundaries. families were delicate structures, built on trust, respect, and love. She had spent a lifetime protecting hers, and she would not let one moment of confusion undo years of care. Meanwhile, Imran stared at the ceiling in his own room. He replayed his conversation with Farah over and over. He felt ashamed, embarrassed, but also grateful. Grateful that she had understood without accusation. Grateful that she had offered guidance without condescension. He realized how easily emotions could mislead, how quickly respect and restraint could be overshadowed by longing. He vowed to himself to regain composure, to focus entirely on his marriage, and to preserve the delicate trust between him, Amina, and Farah. In the days that followed, the tension did not vanish immediately. Small moments carried reminders of that conversation. A glance that lingered too long, a hand brushing against a shoulder, a shared silence in the kitchen. Farah noticed these things, cataloged them quietly in her mind, and let them pass without comment. She maintained her normal routines, keeping conversations polite, and her presence firm but gentle. She realized that boundaries were not simply rules, they were practices, habits reinforced daily. Moments of discipline that protected hearts from wandering. Imran, too, adapted. He was careful not to repeat the subtle missteps that had marked. That night, he spoke more often with Amina, engaged her fully in conversation, and treated Farah with respectful warmth rather than unsteady vulnerability. Each day, the house regained more of its usual rhythm, yet the memory of that one night lingered quietly. A lesson embedded deep in their awareness of each other. Farah understood that human emotion was unpredictable, and that attraction, even fleeting or unintentional, was not the same as desire. Compassion could feel like affection. Comfort could feel like connection. And sometimes the bravest act of love was restraint, of choosing the right path even when the heart whispered otherwise. She reflected on this as she prepared meals, folded laundry, and walked through the quiet halls of her home. Every glance from Imran, every word spoken or unsaid, reinforced the need for mindfulness, for honesty, and for integrity. By the end of the week, the unspoken tension began to ease. Conversations flowed more naturally, smiles returned to their faces without strain, and laughter, even quiet laughter, reappeared in the living room. Imran's steps were lighter, Amina's presence more reassuring, and Farah's heart more at peace. Yet the memory of the moment remained, a quiet reminder that life could shift in an instant and that the strength of relationships depended on awareness, respect, and the courage to act wisely. And through it all, Farah realized that the night of that strange, lingering glance had not weakened the family, had made her more vigilant, more compassionate, and more grateful for the love and trust that bound them together. The days following the tense afternoon seemed to flow differently, almost as if the house itself had shifted its rhythm. Farah noticed subtle changes in Imran's demeanor. He moved more deliberately, as if carrying the weight of his own thoughts and guilt. Even in small gestures, pouring tea, placing a book back on the shelf, straightening the cushions, there was a carefulness that hadn't been there before. Farah watched him silently, noticing how every step seemed guided by restraint. She understood the struggle of emotions battling responsibility, and she respected his effort to choose wisely. That evening, Farah had finished tidying the living room and was preparing dinner. The smell of spices and simmering food filled the house, masking the tension that still lingered like a faint shadow. She heard Imran moving upstairs, then the soft creak of the stairs as he returned. He carried himself differently, slower and more deliberate, as though each step was a reminder to remain controlled. Farah's hands paused over the cutting board. She had learned long ago that moments like this could become turning points, shaping relationships in ways that lasted far beyond a single conversation. Imran entered the kitchen quietly, careful not to startle her. "You've been working hard," he said softly. His voice was steady but gentle, carrying a hint of apology without words. Farah smiled faintly, acknowledging his observation. "It's nothing unusual," she replied. "Just preparing dinner. You should sit. You look tired." He shook his head. "I want to talk," he said. His words were deliberate, carrying a gravity that made Farah stop for a moment. She set the knife down and turned to face him fully. "About what?" she asked, her voice calm, even though her heart raced slightly. She knew this was the moment where boundaries could be tested, where restraint was more important than ever. He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers with honesty. "About that night. About my feelings, my confusion." He paused, searching for the right words. "I've realized that I let myself get carried away in my thoughts. I confused comfort with something deeper. And I don't want to do that. Again, I don't want to hurt anyone, especially Amina or you." Farah listened carefully, feeling the intensity of his confession without judgment. She understood completely. Human emotions were unpredictable, especially when people were tired, stressed, or lonely. Compassion could be mistaken for affection, concern for desire. She had faced such moments herself, and she knew how easily hearts could be misled if not guided wisely. "You've done the right thing by admitting it," Farah said softly, choosing her words with care. "Recognizing confusion before it turns into action shows strength. It also protects the people you care about. That is more important than any fleeting feeling." Imran's shoulders slumped slightly, relief and remorse blending together in his expression. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said quietly. Farah shook her head. "Kindness is not something to earn. It's something to give freely, and sometimes it's needed the most when people make mistakes or feel lost." He looked down at his hands, fidgeting slightly. "I never wanted to disrespect you, or Amina. I never wanted to betray trust." His voice was sincere, trembling with the weight of honesty. Farah felt a pang of sympathy for him. She understood that emotions, even the confusing ones, were natural. What mattered was what people did with them. Restraint, integrity, and honesty could prevent a misstep from becoming a mistake. "You are loyal," Farah said, her voice steady but gentle. "That loyalty matters. A family is built on trust, not just love or feelings. Remember that." He nodded as if memorizing her words. "I will. I promise. I will focus on what matters." There was a flicker of determination in his eyes now, mixed with humility. Farah sensed that the turning point had come. This conversation, delicate and careful, would guide their future interactions, shaping a safe, respectful relationship. After a pause, Farah spoke again, softer this time. "Imran, life can be overwhelming. Work, family, responsibilities. Sometimes it makes us mistake gratitude or comfort for something more. That's normal. What matters is recognizing it and choosing the right path." He smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and understanding. "Learned that now," he admitted. "I won't let my feelings endanger anyone or anything important." The rest of the evening passed in quiet conversation, practical and neutral, yet carrying a subtle shift. The tension that had been thick in the room earlier began to dissipate. Farah moved through her tasks calmly, folding clothes, checking the oven, ranging the table, while Imran stayed nearby, assisting with small chores, careful not to overstep boundaries. They worked side by side, communicating with gentle smiles and nods rather than words that could mislead. Later, when Amina returned from her friend's visit, the house felt warmer. Laughter and chatter filled the living room as she recounted her day. Farah felt the comfort of family life returning. Imran engaged fully with Amina, attentive, playful, yet still careful. Farah observed quietly, her heart lightening. She realized that honesty and restraint had restored balance to the household. Emotions could be strong and confusing, but thoughtful. Choices guided by respect and love could heal the disturbances that naturally arose. That night, as Farah lay in bed, she reflected on the past days. The moments of tension, the unspoken questions, the quiet confessions they had all led to understanding and clarity. She realized that human hearts were complex and that emotional honesty was essential. She understood that sometimes the bravest, Choice was not following every feeling but resisting impulses in order to protect trust and relationships. Imran, meanwhile, sat awake in his room, replaying the conversation. He thought about his actions, his fleeting confusion, and the way Farah had responded with composure and guidance. He felt gratitude for her wisdom, remorse for his vulnerability, and determination to maintain boundaries moving forward. He knew that true strength came from self-control and respect for others, not from indulgence in fleeting emotions. The days turned into weeks, and the house gradually returned to its natural rhythm. Farah maintained her gentle vigilance, listening and observing without intruding, guiding through presence and example. Imran focused on nurturing his marriage with Amina, investing his energy into care and attention. Their interactions became natural, again polite, respectful, warm but never crossing the line that defined family boundaries. The memory of that one confusing night remained, a quiet lesson embedded in their awareness of each other. Farah noticed subtle signs of growth in Imran. He seemed more patient, more attuned to the nuances of family life. He laughed more freely with Amina, helped with chores without being prompted, and carried himself with a calm presence that reassured her. She realized that emotional awareness, paired with honesty, could transform a moment of weakness into a source of personal growth. Amina, too, seemed happier, more connected to her husband, unaware of the depth of the internal struggle he had faced. Farah felt grateful that the family had navigated this challenge without damage. She understood that love was not only about passion or emotion, it was about care, protection, and sometimes letting go of fleeting impulses to preserve trust. 1. Afternoon, Farah and Imran found themselves in the garden, tending to the flowers. The sun cast a gentle glow over the petals, and the air smelled of earth and rain from the week before. They worked quietly, side by side, their conversation light and practical. Farah noticed a smile on his face that wasn't forced, a calm that hadn't been there before. It struck her that clarity and restraint could bring peace that passion never could. "Your roses are blooming beautifully," Imran said, nodding toward the bed of flowers she had planted. Farah smiled. "It takes patience, care, and consistency. That's what makes them grow." Imran paused, looking at her meaningfully. Farah felt a familiar warmth, but she kept her focus on the flowers. She understood that appreciation did not have to cross into desire. It could exist purely as respect and gratitude. "You've taught me a lot," he said quietly. "Not just about kindness, but about understanding boundaries and choosing what's right." Farah glanced at him, her heart steady. "Life teaches that lesson over and over," she said. "We just have to be willing to listen." They continued their work, the quiet filled with understanding rather than tension. The house behind them felt safe, warm, and alive. The past confusion was now a memory, a lesson in emotional honesty, self-control, and family respect. As evening approached, Farah looked at Imran and thought of the days that had passed. One night, one glance, one conversation had almost unbalanced the household. But through honesty, patience, and courage, they had preserved trust. She realized that life would always present confusing emotions, but the choices made in response would define character, relationships, and peace. That night, the family gathered for dinner. Laughter filled the room and conversation flowed naturally. Imran and Amina shared a quiet exchange that made Farah smile. The house was calm, grounded in care and respect. Farah felt a profound sense of relief and pride. The storm had passed and the home remained intact, stronger for having faced uncertainty together. Farah went to bed later, reflecting on the lessons of that week. She understood the delicate balance of human emotion, the power of honesty, and the courage required to act rightly when hearts are confused. She realized that love could take many forms: compassion, guidance, protection.